I'm so excited to bring this guest today. I think out of all the stories and the people I've had the pleasure of meeting and walking through with their finances, Nick is probably my favorite. And here's why. I had two of his daughters who had applied here, and probably two of the best employees I've ever had. They just, I instantly took to both Lily and Abby, and they came into my organization here at Jackie and just, I mean, anything that was asked of them. Their work ethic was phenomenal. And so I eventually had the pleasure, their dad came to meet them one day, and I met him and just really got to know their family. And I was always so impressed with the way they raised their kids. And so I am just so grateful to have Nick here today to share his story. I know it has not been easy, and just his vulnerability to share with you guys of what he's walked through, but most importantly, where he is now, which is the most exciting piece for me. So I'm grateful to have you here, Nick, today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Tiffany, I'll let you take it from here.
For sure. Nick, thanks for being with us today. I have loved getting to talk to you and meet you, and I feel like we're already the best of friends so quickly. You are incredible. But so why don't we start with, how did you and Amber get to a point where you felt comfortable enough or in the relationship to where you started to talk about those financial struggles between?
The main thing was Amber's story that she shared. She was vulnerable. She shared her story, and for what she went through, including SpaghettiOs and all kinds of things that she had to do from a higher life to a really low point in her life. And when she shared that with my wife and I, it really resonated because behind the curtain, that was us. That was my wife and I. So we actually went through the process of having to now come clean with Amber, who didn't really know all the background. Nick was a good guy. She sensed there was something there. And then after a wonderful function one night here, as Amber would do, she's very shy. She said, "Why don't you and Nancy just come in and have a chat with me?" Well, having a chat meant we're going to have to come in and tell the whole story if we come into her office. So we did. We came into the office that day, and basically that's how I really met Amber, even though I knew her through my daughters working here. But that's how we really got to know her, was in that meeting, Amber, my wife, and I.
And she made you feel so comfortable.
So comfortable, and shared more of her story. And the story that we heard was identical, really, to ours, having been at a high pinnacle of your life financially, and then suddenly finding yourself at the absolute bottom and not knowing really how did all this happen and how quick it happened. And her story then of recovery and saying that you can do this, you can do this. She gave us such a good confidence that we could do this, but we had to commit to something, and we could not let it go. We could not go away from it. So that really was the beginning of this great story.
That's awesome. So as a couple, there's so many couples out there that are going through, and even if I say a lot of times it's silently, a lot of people just don't know, and we've all gone through it. But as a couple, how did this affect you guys?
Well, the number, we had all the numbers, and found one number that just smacked me in the head, that the divorce rate for people 55 and older, the number one reason were financial. And I did not know that. And here I was in the financial business for a lot of years, and I saw people that got divorced, and I was shocked. They've been married for so long, and I know they're not doing anything on the side, or the guy or the woman or whatever. It's not that. And then it hit me in the face that we found the fact that it was financial issues. And so often driven by the man not taking some kind of control over the process. And that was probably the most striking as Nancy and I were going through this. And it started to get very edgy. We were going down that same path and probably would have ended up as a statistic, very honestly.
I think what was so cool is when they came in to talk with me that day and I could see them just kind of unpackaging. And the more I would talk, the more they would open up. And it's so the case in life. I think all of us have these stories inside of us, and I call them tests, right? Because I
Mhm.
think God gives us tests, but it truly is a testimony of where you were and where he's taking you. And if you're vulnerable enough to
Mm.
get in the trenches and share your story, what you're actually doing is creating the space for someone else to share theirs
Mhm.
and in complete confidence that, hey, you've been there. So I feel comfortable just being vulnerable and honest. And I think finances is one of these things that it's an ooey topic, especially Nick was a financial planner.
Wow.
Oh, the irony, right? A financial planner, and he and his wife have over $140,000 worth of credit card debt. I mean, I could feel it for him. I could feel the stress and the strain on their marriage when I sat across the table with them. But what I also saw was their love for each other. And the more vulnerable they shared, the more they came together to solve the problem.
We said in that meeting, Amber, with you, especially my wife, but we said in that meeting things we had never said out loud. We had kept them inside. And you allowed us a forum where we could say things that we hadn't said that needed to be said in regard to how um, the failures, the mistakes, all the reasons, and all you did was sit there and listen to us, and both of us were chiming in together. My wife heard me say some things I'd never said with her sitting next to me, and and she said some things that I had never heard her say, and it was all in this box. And you allowed us to open this box, and then once it started to come out, as God would have it, we just said, you know what? What do we have to lose? We are at rock bottom. We have nowhere to go. And this person said that you can do this, but you have to act, you have to commit. And that was the hard part, is to say, what do we need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the story began.
That's incredible. So, well, I've got two questions for you. So first, I'd like to know, so who was running the finances at that time, or did you guys do it as a team, as a unit?
Neither. How's that for a good answer? It was just running itself.
Okay.
And as long as she had credit cards and I had credit cards, it ran itself.
Well, let's
And,
face it, and when it runs itself, then no one has to take responsibility for it,
No,
right?
it was,
So
you know.
true.
That's
and-
such a common theme. People, as long as they're not talking about it and looking at it and putting it to paper, nobody knows where anybody is with it. And I think that's where it's a safer place for people when they don't want to deal with it.
Do you know the very first time you mentioned 140, that was the number. The very first time that number ever came up was one day when she was working at a patio design store and wanted to buy, a piece for our patio. And I said, well, I'll see if we have enough. She goes, what do you mean? It's only like, and I said, I'll see if we have enough. And she just stood there a minute and looked at me and said, out of nowhere, how much do we have on credit card debt?
Mm.
That was the first time. It's very hard because as a financial planner and always having, income coming in, not as much because the markets had pulled back and I was getting less fee. She had never asked me that before. And I was sitting on a chair and she was sitting at the desk and looked down at me and shook her head and didn't say anything. So that was the point where, and that was long before we came in to meet with Amber. So we had to go home that night somehow and struggle through dinner, knowing that now subject had been opened up, that wound had been opened up, wide open, and we had to talk about it now, and yet we still didn't.
Mm.
I think the most we talked about it is the next credit card bill came in from one of the department stores, and I went, "What's this? How did it go up?" And the reason was given, and I just shook my head. I didn't pound the table. I didn't say, give me the cards. I'm going to put them in the freezer or whatever, people do with their credit cards, rather than the scissor right over there.
Yes.
We didn't do any of that because that was our lifeblood. And I know as people now are going through tough times, they're doing like we were. We were living off our credit cards, and we were living our life, from groceries to gas to every single credit card had a balance.
Yeah, so the steak dinner that you ate, 3 years prior, you were still paying for.
Still paying for it.
Imagine that.
Tasted good. We could even describe how wonderful the setting was and how romantic it was. And we should have really been not there, number one. Number two, should have dealt with it before we went to dinner that night. And like I was telling you, Tiffany, the other day where I had something I thought I had planned, and my wife for the first time said, "Can we afford that?" And I said, and because then she added, I have some procedures coming up that I have to do, as a follow-up to the surgery she had. And I said, okay, this is real. This is the reality. We can't do that. What's the word I used, Tiffany?
No.
No. And that word was not in my vocabulary for a long time. And I've now passed that word on to our family, especially my son in his new marriage and a young child. And I saw the same thing starting to form. And believe me, when you've been there, and you know this, Amber, you smell it. As soon as it starts, you smell it. You see excuses. You see things like, they can't do this next weekend with us because of whatever. And I said, I know that's not the reason. The reason is they don't have the money. And like me, making good wage, all those things were in place. Something is there, and it can only be one thing, and that was debt being accumulated.
What a gift for your kids to watch you guys. I know you've been in the program now 3 years, so which is so hard to believe it's already been that long. I'm curious how much you guys have paid off, what you have left, when you'll be done. Like, I think people want to hear, what did it look like 3 years in? Where are you now? And when are you going to be completed?
If I don't cry through this, it'll be amazing to think that. I have the original worksheets here, all the way back to the very first one, where we even had to delay the first payment because we couldn't afford it. We didn't have enough money. And I got my first unemployment check. I'd lost my job. My contract wasn't renewed. So we were really in dire strait. They very nicely, thank you for whatever call you made, delay, because we signed a contract, when Amber set us up in the program with a company, and they delayed it a month and said, but you can't miss this one. You have to. And I think that was more than, you can't miss this one because you're under contract. You can't miss this one because you're going to quit. You're going to uncommit. So we did everything we could do to come up with that dollar amount the next month in March of 2020. And we have $30,000 left out of the 140.
Amazing.
And
incredible.
That's huge.
And every month that money is auto-debited from our bank account. We don't touch it. We don't write a check. We don't do anything. It just comes out. We have to make sure it's there every month. Amber's company arranged it where they have 2 sets of payments, settlement payments, in between paychecks. So they balance the paychecks so I could have enough income to make sure the payment was covered, have some for living, and then have enough in the next paycheck to cover the next payment. So, and it's April of 24. I'm surprised I didn't bring you the exact date.
Wow.
Because actually,
I'm going to put that on my calendar, Nick.
Actually,
I will call you that day.
Okay, read it.
Yes.
Read it.
I have to put my glasses
Read
on,
it.
Let me see.
I do have the date, actually.
April 27th, 2024.
What is today? What is today?
You know what I love the most about this is that you said, the end, Lord willing. And I think that's been your guiding beacon this entire time. That's the reason that Nick hasn't missed a payment in 3 years. And the irony of that, going from someone who got $140,000 in debt, he entered the program on an unemployment check.
Incredible.
He did not have a job. And he was so committed to his wife, to his family, to his financial future to commit to making these payments. Hasn't missed one. I'm looking at it. So
incredible.
That's amazing. I'm putting this calendar, but I'm putting this date on my calendar. That's amazing, Nick.
Well, it makes it all real
Yeah.
because all these sheets behind this,
Yep.
all these sheets are the ones that were chipping away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the grand finale
Amazing.
at the end. And again, I did put Lord willing, and TYL is on a lot of that's thank you, Lord. It's on my work that I do at home. It's on checks sometimes, and I'm sure somebody wonders what's TYL under my signature. And it's thank you, Lord. And I that's kind of my moniker that I use for so many different things. And to believe, that we're at that point. And by the way, that very first payment,
Yeah.
and I hear these stories all the time, and I never believe them, that I needed $700, and suddenly I got a check for $700 for something. The unemployment check that came in, the 2 unemployment checks that came in, by $10 were the exact amount of the first payment on the debt program.
Wow.
I didn't know what I would end up getting because they
Right.
put you through a process, and they send then they give you a regular payment schedule when your unemployment check. And Nancy was still working, basically paying our living expenses.
Yeah.
That was a tearful, amazing day that I still have that in another file
So
at
cool.
home. All the payments on the left column from unemployment and the payments to the debt program on the right column. And they just matched all the way down for months and months and months until, by God's grace, at an older age, somebody recognized in a major insurance company that I had a lot of qualities and everything was starting to go remote. And the fact that I could do this work by all my experience. So I've been gainfully employed now for 9 months
Awesome.
with a major company, and
Benefits and
all the benefits, the health benefits, especially for my wife, not as much for me, but has been really, we pray every night, my wife and I. We never used to do that. Before we go to bed, we pray every night, every single night. And the one thing we always thank God for is how he provided, and we don't even know how. And I said, Lord, you know how you provided for us on this day in ways that we don't even know about. But I do have financial numbers all the way back to 3 years ago.
That's incredible. Well, I think about the 700 you were talking about and how it came in and it was like within $10. And I see that, like, we've gone through those and I'm sure you've had them as well, Amber, but that's a God wink.
Pennies from heaven and all these things that they call it.
Yep.
Yeah, God winks. And we've had some that my wife was leaving, a job, previous job from where she's working now. And she had a surgery, big surgery last summer that we had to fly to New York for. He was the top surgeon that did this operation. And the final check that she got, which we didn't know when we would get that, she never put it directly into our account by direct deposit. She always mails us a check. She direct deposited it, and by $25 is the exact amount of the airfare and the hotel.
wow.
Wow.
And I'm saying, again, how great thou art.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not believe because of all God winks and all these stories? But when they start to happen, and when that first unemployment, I had to delay that commitment, and then the first unemployment check came in, and it added to what we had in the checking account, and it added up to exactly the payment. And, by
Awesome.
That's awesome.
$50 or whatever it was. And I said, how'd that happen? And I said, now I know.
You know what I love seeing too is to see Nick now. And if you would have seen him back 3 years ago, even his overall health and well-being. Like when I walked in today and he's smiling from ear to ear and he's just radiates joy, you can see the weight of the world's off his shoulders. And I know that was not always the case for he and his wife. And so I think, that's such a big piece of it that people don't realize when you're carrying this, what I call a dirty little secret. That's what debt is.
Right.
It's just something that you're just not dealing with, but how it manifests itself inside of your body and your relationships and all the toll it takes when you are free of that, right? And you're heading out the other side, all the goodness that's come with it. Like he looks healthier than I've ever seen him. He's got a great job. He's also participating at another company who absolutely loves and adores him. His
That's
wife
my side
is doing
gig
great.
on the weekends.
Yeah, he's had a grandchild, like all these things. And come April 27th, 2024, what happens on that date is not just that he's completed the program. Everything flips because he's been allocating a certain amount of money every single month to go towards paying a credit card that he no longer will have to do. So it's at that point, if I take that same amount of money and I put it into something that's going to grow with his financial background, it's going to now turn the opposite direction. Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Well, I will say this, we talked about, you had a lot of stuff from people looking from the outside in. You had it all. You guys had it all, right? But you think about that, and I always say that it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's how much money you have at the end of the month. And it doesn't matter how much you make. If you're $1 over at the end, you're in debt. And we always talk about that, Amber. So you talked about when we were in the office talking about where you had a rock bottom moment. So why don't you just talk about that and let.
You would ask that.
It's a good story.
It is a good story.
Well, we were fortunate to have our children here. But in this particular case, Tiffany, it wasn't fortunate that they were here because they called a family meeting. And I know maybe some of you out there may be laughing, oh no, not the family meeting.
Right.
And when there's a family meeting, it's usually about something very serious. Nancy and I already knew what it was about, okay? And when they sat us down, Nancy on a couch, at one of our children's couches, me here, she here, they over there, the sides were drawn, and nobody was sitting next to us.
Sounds like an intervention.
Yes, it was pretty much a dramatic moment of, we're done helping you. We're done giving you money. We're done dealing with what your issue is. And they had talked about it a number of times, and we were, again, playing like, really? You're not helping dear old dad and mom anymore? No, we're not, until you do something positive and you commit to something positive. Wow. And that's when the function came here, and then the Amber meeting came. That was the low point of this whole process, is when your own children tell you lovingly, that was tough love that I had given them as children, that they tough loved me back in a way that I had never received from them, but in such a positive way. And then shortly after is when the program came into place.
That is love. I think as parents and as children, it's hard to watch someone else go through financial difficulty, but it's even harder to call it out, right? And so I think that, a lot of times it can be perceived as, oh, you have no idea my financial situation. Stay out of my business.
Right.
But it really came from a space of love and care for you guys as parents. And I even loved the part that he shared with us about them creating that shared spreadsheet for accountability.
Yes.
What a brilliant idea.
Brilliant.
Yeah, my son-in-law set up that great spreadsheet, which very easy for me to do.
Right.
I don't account for every single dollar every time we spend it, but I have a spreadsheet now where it's real time. And I just, every couple of days, I'll accumulate what we have. I have a drawer in my office. Amber knows I probably have a drawer, and it's probably clipped, and it's in a folder. Yes, all of that. And I just pull out, and anything that I haven't posted yet onto the spreadsheet is open, and anything I have has a check mark through it with PS, posted with a scribble on it. I do my own shorthand. So yeah, I know by the end of every week at least, but certainly every few days, my two son-in-laws can go in and click on the share button. And one of them made the comment the other day about, a large expenditure. But I had it, you don't just put in $500 with nothing there. You put in what the expenditure was. And he went, oh, wow. And I said, you saw that? He goes, of course I saw it. He says, I look at it every once in a while.
So good, though.
Yeah, it's accountability.
It is,
and,
like any other area of life. And
yes,
I've never heard it done that way, but I think that is such a great tool.
Simple.
Yes.
And even for an older guy or older people out there that are going, well, I don't know how to use a computer. Let somebody younger in your family set it up. That's what he did. And then the hardest part I had was going from month to month and creating the worksheet. But then he said, you go down and you do something, and he's got it all written out for me so I don't wipe out all the other months of the worksheets. And then he says, you go down to the drop down, and then I have the instruction literally on my computer. So I've been doing it every month now. So I'm now a spreadsheet expert.
Good for you.
And gave my spreadsheet with all my numbers on it to my son.
Awesome.
So that was full accountability and exposure fearlessly. And because I knew that no factor had not come into play enough in his early months of his marriage.
Yeah.
So he got my spreadsheet. So he knew everything about me. And we just did something for him because I knew with the baby and things that he needed some help. Dad sends things, mom sends things, and I paid something, okay? And it was in the budget. It was on that spreadsheet. And I showed him the spreadsheet, and I said, I didn't say your name on there, but you know what that amount is? He goes, oh my gosh. I said, it's paid, and you don't have to worry about it until after, your move that's upcoming for his new job. And he just started to cry.
Wow.
So that's a great joy.
That's amazing.
Is after that came to me. And oh, by the way, there was a lot of help along the way for my cataract surgery and all that our church did. And every month I've been putting money into that benevolent fund. And I'm almost back to the amount that they granted me for my surgery.
Awesome. So good.
So, by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And that's all budgeted every month.
Well, I will say, I think that's incredible. And I love hearing the stories about your family. And most importantly, I love that you're not only just walking the walk or talking the talk, but you're actually showing your family now how to do that as well. And I just commend you on that.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of listeners that are going to be out here and they're going to be listening to this. What is one thing that you could share with them that you wish you had known previous to your steps to get out of this financial situation?
You know what the word's going to be, don't you?
I know, but they don't know.
The word no. And I didn't use it. And I, as a financial planner, I use it a lot with people that were not in my family, were not close to me, did not share things that I shared. And I didn't use it in my own household. And as a man that should have been the steward and should have been leading, and by the way, as an outshoot for you guys, my wife sees me totally different than she did 3 years ago.
Wow.
She really does. She sees me totally different. That takes control and
Takes responsibility.
responsibility.
That's right.
And now, as you said, Tiffany, is now passing it on. She really loves that. And the fact that we're at a point now where it's a joy to talk about. I didn't sign up for this lousy experience that I had. But God gave it to me, and now I believe, as you certainly both of you do, especially you, Amber, you really believe the story needs to be shared because there's so many dimensions to it.
Yep.
And it can be done, and it's real. And the other word is truth. And beside no, always be truthful. And I couldn't do it. I could not do it and confront the situation that needed to be confronted 3 years ago. And now, when it was a painting that she wanted to do, and I said no, and she looked at me and didn't flinch. And I said, we can't do that, maybe next month.
Right.
And do you know, because she said it's on sale right now. And I'd heard that before. I said,
Those famous
We all
words.
say that.
I don't care. And those words actually came out of my mouth. And we didn't. And it went back up to regular price. And she was so down about it. And about the middle of the next month, it went on sale again for less than what it was before.
Awesome.
So I said, okay, God, you help me. You help me. You help me say no. And you help her get the picture she really wanted. And it's a beautiful picture in our living room.
Cool.
And it wasn't that expensive, but it was one of those times in my life that I believe God really said, you can do this. And that's how easy it was. So yeah, I pray every day again that God can keep me healthy. I can continue to work, earn a wage, that I can continue to make my payments, and that on April 27th, and I'll come to your office.
Yep.
and
Celebrate.
and maybe I'll buy the bottle sparkling. So
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that
Thank
you were
you.
able to share your story today with
Thank
everybody.
you.
I
Been
know
a joy.
that that's the hardest part for people to open up and feel like, hey, that's me. That's where I am. So my hope is that people listening to Nick's story, that they're going to feel comfortable enough to reach out even to us, which they can on our website, and ask for something that I refer to as the 15-minute clarity call, which is kind of what we had that day with you.
Yeah.
And I think
So important.
just by doing that and having the space to confidentially share where you are, Tiffany and myself will be able to sit with thousands of people. And I believe, Nick, that you're going to continue to help a ton of people just with your own story. So thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you,
I look
Tiffany.
forward to
Thank
that,
you, Amber.
that finish line date.
Celebrating.
April 27th, and we're going to mark it by God's grace and Lord willing.
Yep.
And I believe that's the major factor in all of this. So if it's according to His will that on April 27th of 24 that we're completely free of debt, then number one, before that little gathering at your office, I want to do something for the kingdom.
Yeah. Great.
When that first open payment comes up,
Awesome.
and to help somebody else like we used to do, and then we can open that bottle.
Awesome.
And if it's in your office, it will be especially meaningful.
Yes.
Because that's where it started when I didn't look like I look today.
Yep.
3
And
years
I
ago.
also want to have you back on the show then too.
Well,
I want people to hear where you are.
Appreciate that.
We're not going to leave people hanging. So Nick will be back with us at the end of his
Another
program.
episode.
Yes,
huh? Okay.
absolutely.
To share where they are now. So thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.